Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar is Velocity Banking: Accelerate Your Debt Freedom, and today's instructor is Shantae Moore. She is Navajo and African American, and she is certified. She is a certified financial educator for the Native American Financial Literacy Services, and she is wonderful. My name is Melissa Atkins, and I will be your webinar facilitator today. I am the Training and Development Coordinator for the Native Learning Center. A quick disclaimer, this webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. The materials are protected by copyright, trademark, trade secret, and other intellectual property laws and treaties. The terms permit you to use the sites for your personal and non-commercial use only. You may print or save copies of the site solely for your personal and non-commercial use. Before we get started, I want to familiarize you with the new platform and where things can be found. You can access a copy of today's slides and access today's webinar recording in the future by going to the course section. The resource items for download and webinar recordings are available within the online course when you go through the courses page. Each time you are ready to join one of our webinars moving forward, you will just log into the website and click on the large green banner that will be across the top of the screen, like in the picture. Remember that you only have to register for the online platform once, and then you have access to every webinar instead of having to individually register for each one. When you first join the webinar called Virtual Class on the new platform, it will prompt you to complete an audio testing before joining. Please select the listen only option so we can avoid any audio feedback during the webinar. We appreciate your assistance with this. If you are needing to change the speaker your audio is playing from, you can select the phone icon, and this will bring up a list of your speaker and mic devices so you can choose your preferred audio output. Even though you will be muted, we do still want to encourage your participation during today's webinar, and there are a couple of tools you can use. Please note that if you're not muted, you can mute your mic by clicking on the blue microphone icon at the bottom of the screen. In the left-handed gray menu panel, you'll see the public chat and shared notes and the users list. If you click on the shared notes, you will find a link for today's webinar feedback survey, a link to join our weekly email newsletter so you can always know when our webinars and various trainings are happening, a link to the new location of our Cathedral webinars archive on our YouTube channel, a link to connect with us on LinkedIn, and a link to bookmark for easy login to Cathedral Constant Learning in the future. If you click on the public chat, you will see a chat open between all webinar attendees, and you'll see facilitator and your webinar instructor. Simply click in the box that says send message to public chat, type the message you want to send, and hit enter or click that blue paper airplane icon to send your message in. Please send your comments and any questions you have in the chat, and feel free to use the raise hand feature in the bottom right corner of the screen if you think we have missed something along the way. Any tech support issues can be submitted here as well, and I will do my best to help you navigate through it. Let's all get the chat box going together now by letting us know your name, where you're joining us from, your tribal affiliation, and work or role in Indian country. If you want to simply show your reaction or maybe your mood during today's webinar, simply click on the name of the user's list. Next, click Set Status, and this will bring options for you to show you have stepped away, raised hand, are undecided, confused, sad, happy, show applause, or give a thumbs up or a thumbs down. These statuses can be cleared away or changed throughout today's webinar. One quick final note while you're introducing yourselves in the chat is to try to avoid clicking on the red menu panel all the way to the left of the screen. If you click on the red menu panel, it will take you out of the live webinar. If you do accidentally click this, you can simply rejoin by once again clicking on the green banner at the top of the screen. And oops. There we go. And with that, it's a pleasure that I now introduce Shantae Moore.
Hi, thank you so much for that introduction, Lisa. I really appreciate it. Hope everyone is doing well and enjoying today, our fine Tuesday. We are actually going to go on a journey today. I was looking like there's a lot for me to cover today. I like how you all have the option to add in how you're feeling and your mood and things of that nature. And I just want to tell you all, obviously, this this topic, even for me as a financial professional and having, 20 years of experience in working with folks and families and helping them with their finances in all aspects, when I first heard of velocity banking, I was literally crossing my arms thinking like, how is that working? Like how, like, it's such an unusual concept that even for me as a financial professional, when I was first introduced to it, I even was like, wait a minute, something's got to give here. But as I became more educated and I started to learn more, I was like, wow, this strategy, if someone truly implements it to the T, wow, it can really help folks get out of debt so quick, so fast. And because I work with so many people, like that's one of their number one goals is how do I pay down my debt? How do I get out of debt? Like I want to get out of debt because, to be honest, if you're constantly in debt, you're never financially free. And it's always hard to get, to move forward. And so while I spend all that time giving you that quick introduction, I just want to I want you to, I'm going to challenge, the way we thought about debt and saving and interest rates and, anything you might have thought of how to pay down your debt. I'm challenging it all today. So I just want to let you all know that in advance. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Let me stop rambling and let's get going. So first and foremost, a quick disclaimer. Everything that I'm sharing today is strictly educational. I'm not here to give any specific advice. I want to educate you about strategies, but don't take anything that I'm sharing as investment advice, tax advice, anything like that. Or for me saying you should buy this financial product, insurance, none of that. If I go through examples today, they are hypothetical, and I will go through examples. We're going to have some math lessons today. We're going to go through a lot. But those are just for hypothetical purposes only. It's not exact to the penny or to the dollar. I'm using a lot of rounded up numbers. And depending on, especially for those of you watching the recording, some things could change. In the industry I work in, the financial industry, there's constant changes in laws and, taxes, depending on who the new government is in place, things change all the time. So, hopefully nothing that I'm referring to tonight changes, but just keep that in mind as well. And you will not learn everything on this webinar about velocity banking. My goal is to really introduce you to the concept. And toward the end, I'll share some resources that you can use to further your learning. Or if you want to connect with me further, you have my contact information in the chat, but I'll also have that information pulled up as well toward the end. So let's get going, guys. Let's go ahead and jump on this journey. Now, like I mentioned earlier, as a financial professional, one of my goals is I work with clients and really help them identify what are their financial goals and how do we get there. And in my company, we use a process called the 7 money milestones. And this is just in general. When I'm meeting with anyone, I always start with this because what I find is a lot of folks don't know they have a lot of areas of opportunities with their finances. Like your goal might be getting out of debt, but we need to address other things as well. And I will go through all 7 money milestones today and the resources that will be shared with you later. You can look into this further. But the one top milestone listed number 4 is debt management, because a lot of folks, again, are trying to get out of debt, trying to get ahead and finally, pull their way out of it so that they can free up money to save for other things like, saving for your children or, saving for your own retirement. And it really does go beyond, your spending habits. It does go beyond, oh, don't get that Starbucks once a day. I do believe in those things. But what I find in my practice when I'm actually meeting with people, most folks aren't generally overspending. They're really not. They just have an issue with finding the most efficient strategy to actually pay down their debt. And that's what I want to talk about. But in the beginning of the presentation, I would say like the first 10, 15 minutes, we're going to take it back to the basics, because I know that folks, you might have all a different range of where you're at when it comes to your financial education level. I just want to kind of go through some basics of debt management. And then I want to go and transition and talk it to the actual strategy and going through examples of that as well. So I love this slide here. It says, for many, debt is the greatest obstacle to a sound financial future and becoming financially independent. I mean, if you ask folks, like, what's one of the one or two things that keep people up at night, it's usually their finances. And it's most often when it's related to the finances, it's the debt that they have. You know, it causes a lot of stress. It causes a lot of worry. And a lot of folks, again, it's just a huge burden, you know, that people have on their shoulders. You know, so some common, you know, strategies we tell folks to, you know, first of all, eliminate and stay out of debt. You know, I think once you realize, like, okay, my debt is out of hand, I really need to just, you know, stop overspending. You know, I always tell folks, like, look, if you can't buy it with cash, like, you shouldn't be buying it, because otherwise you're using it, you know, you're using your credit or borrowed money. But here's just, you know, 5 quick tips. You know, first of all, just to get a handle on your debt. One, just know what you owe. I mean, how many people have we been in a place where, you know, the mail is unopened, there's a big pile on the kitchen table, and no one is actually opening those statements. They're not looking at it. You're not looking at the balances and things of that nature. I think it's super important to just know what you owe. The next one is to have no more late payments. At a minimum, no matter how much debt you have, at least try to make your minimum payments. And I'll talk about how to strategically pay, but at the end of the day, make your minimum payments. You know, those low payments, you do accumulate extra fees, you know, that you probably don't want. So let's avoid making late payments. And then this is one item here that's super key. And I apologize if you hear ringing in the background. I can't go up and stop my door from ringing. But anyway, target one debt at a time. And for me, this is probably a big factor that I see for a lot of folks, that they, you know, when their strategy to get out of debt is, okay, I have extra money. I'm just going to apply all my extra money to all of my debts across the board. So, you know, maybe let's say your minimum payment is $25 for each credit card. In your head, you're like, well, let me do $50 extra here, $50 extra there, 100 extra there, 100 extra there. To me, that's actually not an efficient strategy. It's really not. The numbers financially, we'll go through the numbers today. It really does not suit you or help you to just try putting extra to everything at once. You really want to target one debt at a time. Put everything that you have extra to one debt, and then pay that one debt off, and then move on. So we'll talk about more about that in detail. A couple other tips. If you have subscriptions that you don't use, like how many times have we, signed up for like Netflix and food services and all type of, you know, workout apps. I have one that I just canceled this morning. You know, we have so many things that we pay for that we don't even use. Gym subscriptions. Cancel those subscriptions if you don't use them. And then an option that might help is also to refinance your mortgage. You know, when you refinance your mortgage, you're dropping your payment from a higher amount to a lower amount. And especially in today's interest rate environment, rates are dropping. You know, we've had 2 or 3 rate cuts just in the last couple of months. The Federal Reserve Bank is expecting to do at least 3 more rate cuts in 2025. So that might be an option to consider. Free up, you know, some extra money on a month-to-month basis. But let's move on and talk about know what you owe. And this is simple. Just go to annualcreditreport.com. I don't know if everybody, I mean, I think some folks might know this. You can actually get a free copy of your credit report from these websites, from every credit bureau, from TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. And I believe this is still true today because of COVID and the pandemic and people were having such financial hardships. I believe you can actually log in once a week or once a day. I think it's maybe once a week and get an updated credit report. Now, they don't give you your actual credit score, but they'll be able to show you like what's listed there, what's actually on your credit report. And then the one thing that I always tell folks to look for is when you're checking your credit report is to actually look for items that are not yours, you know, to start disputing information. And the reason why it's important is just to see, you know, I don't know. Let me tell you some stories. So I remember working with a client, right? It was a young man. I think he was like maybe 25 years old, really start, I was very impressed that he was even coming out to me for professional guidance. And the one thing he would tell me is like, Shantae, I can't get approved for credit cards. I can't get approved for certain things. And we went and checked his credit report, and we found out that his parents had put a bunch of like utilities and all like department store cards in his name attached to his social while he was a child. And, I'm not here to judge. Parents do what they do. But as this young man, as an adult, was trying to, build his credit, those accounts that really were not his, that were, fraudulently opened, unfortunately, were harming his credit. So we went through the process of going through and disputing those transactions and really proving to those, creditors that, hey, I was a minor. I did not do this. Someone did it, but I'm not responsible for it. So just even going through that helped him a lot when it came to cleaning up his credit report. And then obviously his credit score increased as well. So those are some basic things. I think a lot of folks understand that, but it's all about practicality and putting it into action, if we really want to move ahead. So one thing I want to transition to is I want to teach you a financial strategy called the Rule of 72 to help us think about our debt differently as well, and even our savings or wealth. So the Rule of 72, this is a mental math shortcut. Or if you want to learn how long does it take money to double, you actually can use this Rule of 72. You take the interest rate on that money, whether it's money that you're saving, or, in our case, we're talking about debt. So we're borrowing money, right? So when you're borrowing money, you're paying interest on it. You take the number of the interest rate, divide it into 72, and then that will tell you how many years it will take for that money to double. So let's go through some examples here so it makes sense. So let's say, let's talk about from a savings perspective. Let's say you are saving your money in the bank, the savings account. If you were lucky, you're getting 1% interest. If you keep your money sitting in that bank account, earning 1% interest, 72 divided by the number 1 means that if you keep it there, your money will actually double in 72 years. I don't know if that's a great strategy, but this is just how the concept works. You don't change the interest rate from a percentage to a decimal. You just take the number that it is and divide it into 72. So let's look at some other examples. Let's say you were saving money or growing your money with an investment account or, just other places outside of the bank, and you're getting higher interest rate. 72 divided by 3. Let's say you're getting 3% interest. That means your money will double every 24 years. Let's say you found some place to grow your money at 12% interest. And yes, there are places to do that. They can give you that opportunity. 72 divided by 12 means your money would grow every 6 years. And I remember when I first learned this financial concept, I was like blown away. I was like, wow, that's really cool. Like I never thought about my savings in that manner at all, because I want to get as many doubles as possible, right? But let's look at the Rule of 72 when it comes to our debt. So according to wealthhub.com, in July of 2023, when they look at the average interest rates on new credit cards, WalletHub.com, their average interest rate is 22.44% on someone who has a credit card. So if we apply the Rule of 72, 72 divided by 22.44 is 3.2 years. What that means is that if you have a debt on that credit card and you do not pay it off, and you just, you're like, whatever, it's just going to keep, I'm not going to deal with it. But guess what? The bank and financial institution, they're going to deal with it. They're going to double your money every 3 years. So let's say you started with a $10,000, maxed out credit card. 3 years later, it's $20,000. 3 years later from that, it's $40,000. And we're literally talking within a 6 to 9 year time frame. That balance went from $10,000 to $80,000. And again, when I first understood the math beyond, just, oh, here's a little credit card, I was like, oh my God, like I have to get out of debt as quick as possible. Like that was my mind frame, was like, I don't want the rule of 72 working against me. I want the rule of 72 working for me. And so I wanted to start with that because, again, we have to unlearn a lot of things that we think we know about debt and just really understand, like, how does it grow? How does it really double? Because a lot of times people will tell me, like, Shantae, I'm paying, the minimum balance. I pay my credit card every month. I'm paying some money toward it, but it just doesn't feel like it's going anywhere. Well, you can clearly see why. It's the rule of 72. Like if you're not really fully making significant payments on the credit card debt, that money just keeps growing. I mean, the math is just against you at that point. We're talking such a high interest rate that your money just keeps doubling. So let's look at this further. Again, we're going to math. We're in math right now. We're in a math class because again, I don't think people break it down like this. When you're educated, you understand the numbers. Only then can you make different financial decisions, right? You can actually tackle it. So let's move on and talk about interest rates and APR. Because again, when you're qualifying for a credit card, obviously that's attached to your credit score. That's based on, like your credit worthiness. If you have a high credit score, you should technically qualify for low interest rates, right? But how does our debt actually grow? Well, I mean, if you're not making your payments, like we just saw, the rule of 72, if you're carrying balances, if you have late payment fees, if you're just continuing to make purchases that you really, technically can't afford, your debt will grow there as well. But the one thing that I think really actually outpaces anything else is just the interest that you're being charged. The interest, the fees, the interest, the fees, the interest. That's why I repeated it there, because it just accumulates so quickly over and over. It really compounds on itself. So let's understand what is an APR. So APR is the annual percentage rate, and this is according to, let me see, what group is this? Sorry, Capital One. I got this on Capital One's website. I could barely see it there. And if you have questions, guys, put this in the chat. Put the questions in the chat. I do have that open so I can answer those. Annual percentage rate is the yearly cost of borrowing money. Very rare are we going to qualify. I mean, you can qualify for 0% interest, but in very rare conditions do we see that. And again, that's based on your credit worthiness, your credit history. If you have a variable APR, and this is on your credit card statement, it'll tell you if it's a variable rate or fixed rate. That means that the rate can change. It goes up and down with the interest rate environment. Most credit cards are variable interest rates. You're having a variable APR. If you have a fixed APR, that means that the rates do not change. So that'll typically be on like your loans. Like if you had like a personal loan or a mortgage, those rates are typically fixed. But you do want to know whether you're dealing with variable rates or fixed rates, because that will tell you, it'll give you an idea of like how much interest am I being charged, on a month-to-month basis. So when we're talking about credit card annual percentage rate, it's actually not an annual number. Like, for example, let's say you had you qualify, like how we talked about 22.44%. Let's say that's your credit card interest rate. Most people think that the interest rate that they're being charged for the month, they look at the balance at the day 30 and they multiply that times, 22.44% interest. And that's actually not how interest is calculated when it comes to credit card debt. Credit card interest is calculated every day. It's a daily interest rate that's charged to the average balance that you maintain on a credit card that's not paid off before the due date. So let's look into this a lot deeper. So let's say, for example, you had a credit card that you have that's, charging right now 29.99%. And to be honest, when I was putting together this presentation, I was like, let me use some realistic numbers. Like, how many people have a 10%, 12% credit card? Not a lot of people. Like, even me, I think one of my credit cards, the lowest is like 26% APR. And I have great credit. I think it's just because banks, they're just issuing credit cards at high rates, and then if you think about it, the opposite, banks, when we save, let me go off on a tangent real quick. When I save my money at the bank, they probably pay me like 1% interest or less in the basic savings account. But when I borrow money from the bank by way of a credit card, they charge me 20, 25, 30% interest, even more. Like, banks are not stupid. They understand the rule of 72. They understand how to take advantage of people. And again, when I saw that rule of 72, I was like, oh my God, and I understood, like, I don't want the bank taking advantage of me. I want to leverage the banks. But anyway, rant over. So when we look at our credit card APR, to determine what's that daily interest rate, you actually take the APR 29.99 here in this example, divided by 365, which is 365 days in the year, because that's annual. It's an annual rate, which means that every day a balance that I hold is actually being charged is 0.08216%. And again, apologies to the guys, everyone who's not, a math whiz. I recognize it's a lot of math. But let's go on. I think it's just important, whether you catch on right away or not, go rewatch the webinar. But again, this is stuff that the credit card companies don't explain this to us, right? How does the interest on credit cards accumulate? So let's just use an example. Let's say you have a $5,000 credit card balance and it's completely maxed out. Like, you're not able to, add any more, buy anything else. Like, you've maxed that bad boy out and you're being charged 29.99% APR interest. So on day one, remember, we know that daily rate is 0.08216. On day one, so long as you maintain that $5,000 balance and you don't pay it off, you're being charged $4.11 in interest for that day, just for one day. So day two, we still haven't paid it off or paid it down. $5,000 times that daily rate means $4.11 now being charged to you. So you imagine most people don't pay the balance off. They have it, they maintain that balance for the whole day, the whole month, right? And then by day 30, you have actually been charged over $123 in interest just for that 30-day billing cycle, because every day you're being charged $4.11. So over that 30-day period, again, hypothetical, now you're being charged $123,000, which is added to your $5,000 maxed out balance. So now you're like even above the credit limit that you had. And again, this is realistic for a lot of folks. Like, this isn't nothing uncommon. And so let's say, if you owe a $5,000 balance, you're going to have a pretty, high minimum payment. Let's say you get your statement now from the credit card company. Like, okay, Shantae, you didn't pay off your credit card balance. Now you owe us a $135 minimum payment. Okay, perfect. Sure. No problem. Now what that means, I make my $135 minimum payment, right? How much of that goes toward interest? The prior month interest that I accumulated was $123. That gets paid first. And then the extra amount, $11.70, actually goes toward the balance. So now moving into the next month, my balance was not reduced by $135. It was reduced only, my principal balance was only reduced to $4,988. And then the cycle just repeats itself over and over again. It's no wonder that a lot of folks have such a hard time getting out of debt. And again, if we just understood the numbers, I think it would just make us think differently so much about the debts that we have. Like, when I encourage folks, like, if you're going to creditreport.com, understand what debts you have. Make sure that the balances are being reported correctly, but open up your statements. Look at the interest rate. Like, I had to develop a spreadsheet for myself, because I actually have quite a few credit cards that I use for business and all type of, rewards and points and all this stuff. But I had to put a spreadsheet together because I always wanted to know what's the interest rate that I'm being charged, because it's all variable. That changes seemingly, month to month. I calculate my utilization rate, which is how much I, what percent of the credit limit do I actually maintain a balance on. It does take some time to think beyond, I just have a $25 payment due on the first of the month. Like, let's get serious about our credit, our debt, and just really dig into these numbers. Okay, so now that I talked about all the bad stuff, right? The debts, and we don't make any money in our savings, but we pay all of it when we buy when we're borrowing money. Now let's talk strategy, because you came here because you're like, I want to get out of debt, Shante. I want to. Let's talk strategic. How do I do that wisely? How do I manage my cash flow? How do I leverage the money that I have? And the one thing that I put in the description for the webinar is, no matter your income level, no matter where you stand financially, the money that you're bringing in, how do you leverage it strategically? But let's look at how were we taught to think about our money. First of all, I call this the traditional cash flow, model that you have here on the screen. We work a job or business, right? You earn money, you have a paycheck. It's typically direct deposited into a bank account, and your money sits in a bank account, mind you, earning no interest, probably very little. If you're getting interest on a checking account, earning very little money. It sits there until you start using it to pay off bills, pay your mortgage, buy food, whatever you do, until that money gets depleted. And then the cycle repeats over and over. You earn a paycheck, we spend it, it just repeats. So when that money is in your bank account, then only then do you make payments to a lender. And as we learned prior to, a portion of that payment that you make goes toward the actual loan balance, the credit balance, while the greater portion goes toward the interest. That's the traditional cash flow model that we have been ingrained to do. Put our money in the bank, let it sit there, and just pay our bills as they come along. Let's go through a common scenario here. Again, I realize a lot of folks are struggling. I live in the Midwest outside of Chicago. I work with so many communities, and it really hurts my heart. I mean, even me, like, oh my God, trust me, I'm not clear out the gate either, but it really hurts my heart how many people are still struggling. And it's very hard to get ahead nowadays. And I don't think we acknowledge that enough. Like, we think we can live these luxury lifestyles and we try to look like we're rich and we're really not. Like, it's a very unique time in history, in this time period. But anyway, I see the numbers day to day. So, and what I see is that folks, again, they're barely making it. In this example here, someone makes, $47.50 a month. And again, I'm just pulling numbers out the sky. I'm not saying this is average. That's a pretty high income for, certain places. Maybe it's not. But that $47.50 a month is literally used to pay their monthly living expenses. And when I say living expenses, I'm talking about your basic needs: to keep a roof over my head, food in my mouth, gas in my car, to take care of my children, and, just the lights on and the heat in my home, your personal care needs. And on top of that, a lot of times folks are responsibly making their credit card payments. They are, paying that minimum balance. But most often the case is there's nothing left over. There's not a lot of money left over at the end of the month, if anything at all. A lot of people are actually operating in a deficit. And it's no wonder why a lot of folks are depending on credit cards. I just want to share that, because if that's you or someone like that, it's not your fault, and you're not alone. A lot of people are in this scenario. But I think what's important to understand is we can leverage our cash differently. And let's go through this hypothetical example. Let's say you are down to your last $300 in your bank account, and you have to make a choice. I got two bills. They're both due right now. I have to make a credit card minimum payment of $300, or I have to pay my cable bill, $300. And most people could say, oh, turn off cable. Like, look, I don't believe in that excessive restrictive lifestyle. Like, come on now. We have to have some type of enjoyment. But anyway, I digress. In this scenario, people would think, oh my gosh, well, I need $600. I only have $300. I don't have enough to pay both bills. Well, what if you did this? What if you, instead of just trying to come up with $600, you just, first of all, made that payment to the credit card? $300 goes to that credit card. And then what happens? Magically, oh, we actually have some available credit now available. And guess what I can do? I can use that available credit to now pay my cable bill on that credit card, using the credit card. Yes, I use debt to pay, an expense or other debt. But the key word here is leverage. You just leveraged $300. And that's what I want to teach for the rest of the workshop is leverage. How do I leverage the money that I have? How do I choose wisely where to put my income? Where should I put my money? And I really want us to really break that ball and chain of debt, because the name of the game is to attack one debt at a time. Remember, we talked about that in the beginning. You want to attack one debt at a time, and the goal is to minimize the interest that you're being charged. That's the name of the game. How do I minimize the interest that I'm being charged and get rid of one debt at a time? And I believe if we follow these strategies that I'm going to talk about, which is velocity banking, it'll help you get there. It'll at least give you an option to consider. And I talk about this because I do other things outside of just my normal financial work. And I've come into contact with a lot of people who have resorted to debt settlement companies. And these companies prey upon people to say, oh, well, if you hire us, typically it's a law firm, we'll negotiate with your creditors and we'll settle on, a payment to make that's less than 40% of what that gives you a 40% savings or something to that effect. Oh, but by the way, you have to pay us a massive fee to do that, and you're going to have a major impact to your credit history, because they're essentially telling people to stop making payments while they go and negotiate, and you have to pay us back a month, the rest of the debt you still have to pay off on a payment plan. And I don't think, and I struggle, in that aspect that I reach with those folks, I'm like, oh my God, you guys really should try this strategy called velocity banking before signing up for that type of program. But people just don't know about it. They don't hear about it. So anyway, let's talk about it. Velocity banking, your goal is to combat interest. I mean, think of the word velocity, quickly. Quick is very quick, right? Your goal is to combat interest. And there's a couple ways we could do that. So even if you are making credit card payments, let's just increase the payment frequency. Let's say you have it. Let's say your strategy prior to even joining this webinar was, you know what, Shantae, I already am attacking one debt at a time. I'm putting, an extra $100 to one debt and trying to pay that balance down. Well, great. Let's break up that $100 payment into multiple payments throughout the month. Like, let's do $25 a week. Why does that matter? Because you're I'm not saying drastically, it's not a huge difference with just 25, extra, but what you're doing is, like how we looked at the numbers earlier, you're bringing your balance down. And the more that we can bring our balance down, then guess what? The daily interest that we're being charged is also lowered as well. Now, depending on how much extra you make a payment toward will determine that. But I mean, hell, a couple pennies, a couple of dollars extra, it makes a difference. It really does make a difference. The velocity banking also strategizes by using larger lump sum payments to reduce debt. And a lot of folks might be thinking, like, lump sum payments, like, how, Shantae, I don't have any extra lump sum amount of anything. How can I use, where does this lump sum payment come from? Do I have to go and borrow money, get a second job? No. Well, the first way is you could just leverage your current income that you have. I always tell folks, again, I want to teach you things to do with your money that you already have. I'm not saying to be super restrictive and, go get a second job. Just leverage the money that you're already bringing in. Just leverage it differently. How do we do that? So let's, again, this part, it's a lot different from the way we're used to. So let's think of a new cycle of cash flow. Remember how I showed you that traditional cycle of cash flow where we cash our check, it sits in the bank, and then as our bills come up due, then we pull that money out of our bank account. Velocity banking says, instead of having your money sit in the bank, take your paycheck, your income from your paycheck, cash the check, and apply that income towards your highest balance credit card. So yes, if let's say you have a $2,000 paycheck, apply your $2,000 to a credit card. What do you mean, Shantae? I'm used to put this money in the bank account. No, try this differently. Now, the idea is once you apply that income to the debt, now what happens? Well, we have free credit. We have available credit, right? Because now we can use that available credit for everything else. Now, first of all, if you have other expenses that cannot be paid by a credit card, just leave that money in the bank. That could be like your mortgage, like some rental properties. They don't allow you to use a credit card to pay your rent. But very few places can you actually, can you not use a credit card to make payments. So for whatever requires that, just leave that money in the bank. But everything else, put toward your credit card balance, because then we're going to use your credit card available credit to now pay for the rest of your living expenses. So that large lump sum payment, first of all, is going to significantly decrease your balance. I mean, imagine if you had like a $5,000 balance on a credit card, you put in $2,000, now it's only $3,000. That's a huge difference. Now you also have available credit, $2,000 in available credit, and it increases your cash flow. I'm going to explain that in a little bit. Number 3, when you put that money in the credit card, now you use that credit card to pay for everything else. So the gas, the food, the stuff I need for my kids, whatever else, use that credit card. So you're using debt to pay debt, or well, actually that's a little later. You're using debt to pay for now your living expenses. Because let's think about this. Let's just take a step back and think about it. Is your money serving you better sitting in a bank account and a checking account doing nothing, just waiting to be used to pay a bill or an expense? Or is it serving you better to reduce your debt immediately and right now, knowing the ripple effect that has on interest and everything else? That's the question you need to answer. In my opinion, if you apply velocity banking, your income serves you better applying it to a debt versus just sitting in a bank account doing nothing. And with this cycle, for your next pay cycle, you do the same thing again. You apply your income to the credit card again. It frees up that available credit, increases your cash flow, and rinse and repeat the cycle. But what's the difference here? Because you're drastically reducing your balance on that debt, the interest that you're being charged is now reduced every month as well. And that, my friends, when we work out the numbers, when we do the math, that is how your debt gets paid off very quickly. Very, very quickly. If you do a calculator, there's so many like debt payment calculators. They may say, oh yeah, if you just make the minimum payment, your debt will be paid off in 32 years. If you really calculate this strategy out, your debt will probably be paid off in like a fraction of that time, 6-7 years, very, very quickly. And I'm telling you that interest, because you brought the balance down, the interest rate is decreased. We're trying to combat interest. Remember, that's the whole purpose of velocity banking. So again, with the lump sum payment, we're lowering our balance, which means your interest is accruing slower. You're freeing up your available credit, and you're increasing your cash flow. And what do I mean by increasing cash flow? I don't think I shared on another screen. When you remember how a couple slides ago I said, oh, well, when you maintain a credit card balance, you have now, that big lump, that big minimum payment that you have to make. But guess what? When you make a big lump sum payment, you've eliminated that minimum payment into your daily, into your monthly calculations. That cash flow is eliminated. So let's say you are initially, having to make a minimum payment on a credit card of $300 a month, because you're applying your paycheck every pay period. That $300 is no longer an issue. You've already made that minimum payment, so you're actually freeing up that extra $300 as well. So let me take a quick moment for water. Is this making sense? Is this making sense, folks? Can you put it in the chat? Let me know. Again, I know it's a different way to think about how we handle our cash, but is this making a little bit of sense? Let me know, please. I'm going to give you some tools after the webinar to keep learning. Because again, when I first saw this, I was like, wait a hot minute. That's weird. Like, why would I apply my whole paycheck to a credit card balance? But it works. It does work. So as you get that feedback, we'd appreciate it. Let me know. Let me know. I'm challenging the way you think in handling your debt. So the other way to implement the velocity banking strategy, first of all, I was talking about what I just went through was talking about your current income. I'm using my own income. I'm not doing anything differently, but changing where I deposit it. Instead of having it sitting in a bank account, I'm going to use my income immediately to go towards my debt. And then we understand that ripple effect. The other way to leverage velocity banking is by implementing and using a debt tool. So this is where we use debt to pay off debt. I know, like, trust me, when I first saw that as a financial professional, I was like, wait a minute, you're telling people to get in more debts to pay off debt? Like, what do you mean? It's thinking. I'm telling you, it's challenging. It took me a long time to get over that myself. But velocity banking cash flow says, all right, in addition to using your current income, how I just talked about, you actually go and qualify for more debts, like a line of credit or, a 0% interest credit card. We'll go in those details and more. And you take that money that you have, you take that large lump sum that you now have access to, and now you apply it to your debt. Now, you probably will eliminate quite a bit of debt at the same time. If you, let's say, for example, if you qualify for a line of credit that's like $20,000, oh my God, you could probably pay off like 4 or 5 debts immediately, right? So while you pay off that debt, your payment you have, it will still likely go towards interest, but now the majority of it is going toward the principal. And each time you get your paycheck, you just use your paycheck to pay off that new debt. Here an example, they're using a home equity line of credit. So each time, instead of putting it on a credit card, like, the other strategy was you just applying it to your credit card, your income now goes to apply to lower that new line of credit or that new debt that you have. And once you pay down that, in this example, a line of credit, guess what? It renews. That line of credit just doesn't disappear. It renews itself, and now you have a whole nother balance available to you to use. So let's break it down. Let's dive deeper into this, okay? So there's a couple of debt tools you can use. First of all, I think the most easiest one that makes sense for folks is just getting a new credit card. Now, this does require you to have some decent credit to get another credit card, because now you're trying to apply for, like, I need another $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 credit card. And if you have decent credit to do that, then try it. Preferably, you want to obtain a credit card, a new one that has a 0% interest. And then why? Well, because you can do balance transfers. You have an introductory period where that 0% interest is in effect for, like, I've seen new ones up to like 2 years, 15 months, 18 months, 24 months, where you can move that debt out of a high interest, environment to 0%. And it just helps you pay off that debt quicker. The other debt tool that you can use is a line of credit, not a loan. Mind you, I did not put loan. I'm not talking about no loan. No loans do not work here. Line of credit, whether it's a personal line of credit, a business line of credit, or if you own a home equity line of credit. So again, let's dive deeper into this. One question that a lot of folks will tend to ask me was, well, Shantae, I'm taking on more debt. Aren't I paying interest on that new debt as well? Yes. Well, if it's a 0% credit card, no, you're not. But you probably pay like a transfer fee or something to that effect. But the interest rate on that debt, that new debt, it's really going to be insignificant. because so long as you are using your income to bring down that new debts balance, you'll probably get to a point where you want to recharge interest. So again, this is a very strict discipline strategy to implement if you're going to do it. But like the line of credit, typically you're not getting a 0% interest line of credit, but the new interest, the new debt will probably have a much lower interest rate anyway. And because you're paying it down so quickly, it's not going to accumulate as rapidly as doing nothing, is of keeping your credit, your debt where it stands. So let's talk about the credit card first. I think a lot of people kind of recognize this as a strategy already. They just didn't know it was a version of velocity banking. Whereas let's say your old credit card, interest rate was 20%. Now you can transfer that balance to a 0% credit card. That's a huge key factor, a huge benefit that you can have, to where, now you're taking the interest off the table completely. And it really gives you an opportunity to really pay off that balance now that it's not accumulating any interest. We really just go back to this strategy. We're applying the lump sum payments. I would definitely take your income and lower that balance as quickly as possible. And pay it down, pay it off. You're using a 0% credit card to lower the balance, to lower the interest rate and get rid of that balance as quick as possible. So that's pretty simple and straightforward. Let's talk about a line of credit. According to Investopedia, a line of credit is a preset borrowing limit that can be tapped into at any time. So again, this is not a loan. A loan is money that you have to pay back right away. It's distributed to you right away, and you have to make payments back. A line of credit operates differently. It's basically like having a bucket of money that's accessible to you. So let's say, for example, you have a home equity line of credit. You have some equity in your home and you want to tap into that. You could probably get qualified for $20,000, $50,000 line of credit. And you don't have to use that whole, $50,000 amount right away. You really don't. Actually, let me show you this, because this talks about the differences. That money, that $50,000 is just available. So it doesn't say, oh, take the whole $50,000 and do whatever you want. You could take $5,000, pay off your debt, $10,000, whatever. Whatever is comfortable for you and manageable, because you do have to pay it back. So some key differences here. First of all, the funds available. Like I mentioned, the line of credit is flexible. You have a flexible amount of funds available. It's just this bucket of money that you have access to. A loan is different. It's a fixed amount of funds. You get it, you have to pay it back right away. With the line of credit, it typically does have a variable interest rate. And guess what? That's okay. It's likely going to be half the interest that your credit card rate is. If you have a 30% credit card rate, your line of credit is probably going to be like 12 to 15%. That's still in itself. Again, the goal is to combat the interest. With the loan, you have a fixed interest rate. The biggest difference is the repayment. For the line of credit, you have adjustable repayment terms. So you can really have some flexibility on how you pay that money back, when you pay it back. With the loan, again, it's every month, no matter what, you're paying X amount of dollars back. So there is some differences between that. Again, I'm not telling you to get a loan. That's not going to work here when it comes to the velocity banking strategy. The different types of line of credits that are out there, again, personal line of credits, business line of credits, home equity line of credits. Whatever your situation is, suit yourself and figure it out what applies to you. If you're a homeowner, see if you have some equity that you can tap into. If you own a business and you have some income to show that your business is profitable, apply for a business line of credit. If you don't have neither one of those, try going for a personal line of credit. Go to a bank, financial institution, just Google, personal line of credit and see what comes up for you. Just do your research. I don't have any suggestions on what companies to go with. It's totally unique for your situation. So let's say you qualify for a line of credit, and let's say you had a $15,000 line of credit. What you would do is now, okay, I got $15,000. What do I do? You know what? Let me pay off this $5,000 credit card. I got another $1,200 credit card. Let me pay that off. I got this department store credit card. Let me pay that off. And mind you, all those little debts had payments that you had to make toward it, right? Once those debts are paid off, guess what? You've actually now increased your cash flow. You don't have those monthly payments to make, which means you have an extra $375 to use. You have an extra $375 available. So how would you leverage that? Well, first of all, like we talked about the strategy, we've eliminated all that extra debt. And let me not use the word eliminated. We've transferred it to another debt. We're using debt to pay off debt. So now we have this new debt. Okay, I've used the line of credit. All those balances of this example here are now $6,950. I do still have to pay that back on the line of credit. But guess what? I freed up $375 a month, so I can use that. I can use that to actually pay down the line of credit. And the strategy we talked about earlier, use your income. Use your income to go toward that line of credit. If you've never had a line of credit at your bank, most banks, if you qualify for one, the line of credit, when you open it up, it'll actually look like a separate bank account that you have access to. Oftentimes, the financial institution will even give you a debit card that's attached to it. So instead of using your normal checking account to pay for everything else, now we're just using the line of credit. You guys, you see it's a difference. Now we're just using that line of credit. I can apply all my income to that line of credit, and we know that that will reduce the debt and pay down that balance quick as possible. So now let's say you've repaid that line of credit, because if you're applying all your income to that balance, that line of credit, even though it was, back here was almost $7,000, you're probably, if you use the strategy we talked about, using your income to apply toward that debt, you'll probably pay off that $7,000 in a couple months. Seriously, couple months, maybe 6-9 months. I don't know. Again, hypothetical. But guess what? That line of credit is still there. Now you have a whole nother $15,000 that's been renewed. The line of credit stays the same. Now, after you've replenished that available credit, now you can use that amount to go toward other debts. Now let's pay off some bigger things. Man, I would be great to pay off my car note. Let me put a big amount toward that. Now you can actually start tackling your mortgage. Let me make a little chunk toward that. And then again, we're just rinsing and repeating the cycle where, okay, you've used the line of credit to pay off those bigger debts. You're repaying it back with your income, depositing your whole check and applying it toward that line of credit. And you rinse and repeat those cycles. And literally, you will be completely debt-free. And when I'm talking about completely, no car notes, even your mortgage, your 30-year mortgage. Now, if you do this strategy, we've seen folks pay off their mortgage in like 6-7 years. It works. And I remember when I saw this, I was like, that's insane. Like how, like you're using debt to pay down debt. Like that's so hard. And a lot of folks, they don't believe it until they try it. So I actually learned this strategy. I first heard about it. I'm a YouTube University graduate. I learned a lot from YouTube. I watch YouTube more than anything else. And I came across this channel on YouTube called Fantastic Finances. And this lady is like a country lady from the South, in the South. No disrespect to nobody from the South, but she has an accent like me. I know I have a funny accent from the Midwest. And she was going through this stuff. And I was like, lady, the math is mathing. It makes sense. Like it works. Like I actually was working with a couple of my clients and we were able to work out the numbers to make it make sense. And we used to play this video, not yet though, just give me 1 second. What I really, really like about her, and you guys go to her channel on YouTube, just look up Fantastic Finances, is she used this to pay down her debt completely and started teaching other people how to do this. But what I really, really like about her and the video she's going to talk about is just changing your mindset, because our mindset is set to believe that we need to use the banks, that we need to have all this money just sitting in the bank and that, it makes us feel good. Right. And I subscribe to that. It depends on the person's situation. But if we can use, instead of having that money sitting in the bank doing nothing, why not leverage it to pay down debt? And, you know, a lot of people say, well, what if I have an emergency, Shantae? Shouldn't I have my emergency fund in a bank? Isn't the emergency fund in your 7 money milestones, you know, at the beginning? Yes. But if you're wisely and strategically using Velocity Banking, you can have your credit cards as a backup for emergency fund, your line of credit as a backup for emergency fund. You don't have to have money just sitting in a bank not doing anything for you. So go ahead and play the video if you could, because she's going to go through a quick like 20 seconds talking about your mindset and understanding you know, this strategy.
Okay. Just a friendly reminder. You want it played now, right, Shantae?
Yes, if you could, please.
Okay. Everyone is just gonna have to press play once it pops up on your screen. Just make sure you press play. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull that up for you right now.
Okay, I don't remember how long that video is. I hope I'm not talking over your playing of it. Play it later. But thank you. It's a little different on my side, so I can't play it on to see how long it is. But follow her, because I think she does. Is it still playing?
I had a hard time having it pop up, so I'm gonna put it in the chat so that way everyone can watch it. I do apologize for the technical difficulties.
No worries. We got a new platform. We'll figure it out. But anyway, I was just trying to mute in case people were able to push play. But anyway, she just says, you know, let's think differently about how we handle our money when it comes to this and use this strategy. If I could have access to forward the slides, we're coming down to the last, actually be ending a little bit early, but I just want to go through a couple final thoughts on this. Thank you for putting that in. Any questions so far, guys? All right, so a couple final thoughts, and I want to just kind of take some time going through this. So like I mentioned, I know that this is different. I know that, like I said, even for me, especially as a financial professional, it really, really challenged my normal way of even just advising my clients. The final thoughts is, when it comes to debt, first of all, yes, velocity banking is a strategy. But I want folks to know these are things that you can do right now. It doesn't require you to go out and get a new job, a second job, and, you know, do some side gigs. You can use the money that you earn right now to start reducing your debt as quick as possible. It doesn't even require you to go and get the line of credit and change credit cards, any of that at all. That scenario that I showed earlier, where someone has no extra money, they just have, you know, month to month, there's very little left. They can start applying their income differently. Now, it does require somebody to have income. I forgot to put that in the beginning. You do need to have money coming in, hopefully consistently. But whatever funds you have, if you apply it, you can make that work for you. So that's the one thing. Just have the confidence to say, no matter my situation, I can get started with doing some of this stuff. I really can. The second thing is consistency is key, and really discipline. As you see, this is a very unique strategy. You really have to know what your debt is. You have to really, I want to get access to a spreadsheet for this. I know I've had some clients who just kind of worked it out on their own with their own spreadsheets, but I think that's probably the easiest way to kind of keep track of, like, okay, what's the interest rate? How much am I applying? Which debt am I going to work toward right now to, you know, apply this strategy? But it does also take a lot of discipline. Like, this isn't just do a one-time thing and, you know, think magic is going to happen overnight. Like, you want to be consistently, like, especially with the strategy of the, applying your whole paycheck to the debt. You want to do that over and over, because only then will you actually see the results, in a couple of weeks or even a couple months. If you just do it one time and you're like, it's not working, Shantae, it's not. No, you have to give it time, like really, really try it. And to be disciplined, because what I didn't, I don't like to harp on telling people how to spend their money, but if you have bad habits, get some financial coaching, talk to someone about, budgeting and really cutting back, because the whole point of this is to, again, like I mentioned earlier, if you don't have enough cash to pay for something, like, don't buy it. Don't buy it. You can't afford it. Literally, you cannot afford it. You don't want to go and have that available credit freed up and you're like, ooh, now I can go and buy this and now I can go on this vacation and trip. No. Like, we want to have the mindset of, I have a financial goal, I'm working toward that, and I'm going to hit that goal and then work toward the next one. Now, once you hit a good milestone, then celebrate, definitely celebrate. So that's really, you don't want to have that extra spending. You really don't, and most people that I work with, they don't have a spending issue, but if that's you, manage it. This isn't going to work if you keep adding on more debt to what you have. Also, especially with the credit cards, and if you're using your credit cards and if you pay them down, don't close those accounts. Those will, that actually will harm your credit score. You want to keep those accounts open. And if you use your credit card, you'll get to a point where you're able to, you have, at the beginning of the month, you have zero balance. Use the same strategy. Keep using your debt, your credit card, to buy, food and gas and for living expenses. Again, leverage that credit card and just have, instead of having money sit in the bank, and then you can pay off. You'll get to a point where you'll be able to pay off your credit card balance every month. There's no interest being accrued. But the nice part is a lot of credit cards nowadays have rewards and points and cash back. So you're literally going to get to a point where the credit card companies are paying you instead of you paying them. It's really fun when you get there. And financial institutions, when they really see you using your credit card, I've seen this happen. I've seen it actually work on both sides. Sometimes, because the financial institution sees you using your credit card that has not been used in a really long time, because what I've seen is most people, they have a lot of, a credit card is maxed out for years, like a long time. And then all of a sudden they start using it and they're paying it down. The credit card companies are like, oh, she's using this credit card again. Let's go ahead and increase her credit limit. So now you have like a $2,000 credit limit, and then all of a sudden it's $5,000, and they do it on their own. Because credit card companies, again, their idea is to incentivize you to spend money. So in their heads, they're thinking like, oh, well, she's spending this money now, let's give her more credit, which can be fun, not to spend, but to now you have that extra utilization, and that will boost your credit score. On the other end too, I have seen sometimes where credit card companies might decrease your limit because you're making a huge lump payment, and they're concerned about you actually paying off the debt or closing the account. It's really weird. Some financial institutions will do that. Now, first you have like a $5,000 credit limit, then they drop it down to like $3,000. If you see something like that happen, or if you think that might happen to you, instead of doing the big lump sum of your paycheck, just break it down. Do like $100 a day, $500 the next day, $200 the next day. Like, break it down that way, and that'll avoid the credit card companies from decreasing your limit. Again, because your credit is, you're obviously paying down debt, your utilization will decrease, meaning you don't have as much balance. You have more available credit available, which decreases your utilization for your credit utilization. And I think most importantly, at the end of the day, you'll start to see the actual rewards. Your debt will be paid off. It will be eliminated. I mean, can you just imagine, just close your eyes and think of like, oh my God, I don't have any credit card debt right now. I don't have a car note anymore. Oh my God, I don't have a mortgage anymore. That's when you're truly liberated. You're financially free. And you really are at a point where now you can save. You can actually invest money. You can actually put money aside comfortably for other financial goals. You have your emergency fund available, whether it's money sitting in a bank or having extra credit available to use. So that's when you can really work on, you freed up all this extra cash to now you can save and actually invest and work toward your real financial goals. I mean, that's a big financial goal. Don't get me wrong. Getting out of debt is a huge goal, but now we can have fun. We can do the, getting the money in the stock market, things like that. So as I end this, I just want to help you understand, we don't plan to fail in life, especially when it comes to our money. We just fail to plan. I always tell folks, we don't learn about money in school. Very few places actually teach us about money, despite us dealing with money every day. We don't learn about this stuff. So don't ever beat yourself up. I hope to encourage you and give you strategies and hope that you can use and implement. If anyone has any questions, do let me know. Feel free to put those into the chat. In the meantime, I also want to share this resource with you all. My company, the platform that I use is called the How Money Works Company. And we actually have a free ebook that you can download from my website. You can scan the QR code, and I believe it was put in, the download the free ebook link was put in the chat at the beginning of the webinar. This ebook, I just find that I like to give tools to people. It's free. There's 3 versions of it. There's a very long version. It's not long. It's like 80 pages. Then we have like a 20-page version. Then we have like a 2-page version. So if you're looking like, how can I educate people about, not only getting out of debt, this actually goes through our 7 money milestones, but just talks about why is it so important to become educated and learn about money, how to save money, how money works. And then lastly, the one thing I want to share is my contact information. So for those, if you're interested in connecting with me, I'm happy to talk to you about this stuff. I'm happy to look at your situation and help you understand how you can apply, the velocity banking strategy or other financial solutions that are listed here. This last slide, I also offer 30-minute consultations if you scan that QR code, where we can have a phone call or meet on Zoom. That's no cost to you. Download the free ebook. Also, I do have a weekly email newsletter because myself and my office, we're doing free webinars and educational events all the time. So if you want to get connected with me to get invited to those, just send me an email. I'll add you to my newsletter. And please feel free to connect with me on social media. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and I have my own YouTube channel where I have posted other recordings of other financial topics that I've done on my own webinar presentations on. So I didn't see any questions come into the chat. I hope this was helpful for you all. Again, I know it's different. But I've seen the numbers work. I've seen folks actually start paying down their debt using velocity banking. And I hope that you're a little more, you have another tool in your tool belt that you can use to get out of debt. So I'm going to turn it back over to you. Thank you all for letting me share this information.
Thank you so much, Shantae. Once again, you made a very scary topic very easy to digest. So thank you very much for that. I certainly feel a lot better prepared for the future, and I hope our attendees do as well. If there's anything you would like to tell Shantae, please go ahead and fill out today's feedback report. We'll go ahead and put it in the chat one more time. It is all the way, you can click it or you can click the link. That turned out kind of funny. Okay. I'll try resending it in a second, but go ahead and let us know what you thought about today's webinar. It is anonymous. Our next webinar is going to be compliance audits and reporting. It will be December 12th. And it will be, our show times are 2 p.m. EST, 1 p.m. CST, 12 p.m. MST, 11 a.m. PST, and 10 a.m. Alaska time. Our webinar instructor will be Amy Wilson, founder and principal consultant of C Renewal LLC. You can access this webinar recording as well as our other webinar recordings anytime on our YouTube channel at Cathedral Webinar Archive. Don't forget to check out our future events on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. You can also listen to us on our podcast, Hope a Thing, a Native American podcast. And you can find that on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and Google Podcast and Simplecast. Thank you so much for joining us today for today's webinar. We hope to see you on the next one. And once again, thank you again, Shantae. I hope everyone has a wonderful day.